On Larry King Now, Cynthia Nixon.
The thing about stage is you can always, there's always tomorrow night. If you didn't go so well, you can have another crack at it the next day. Whereas film, you know, you have that few hours to get that scene and then it's preserved forever. Motherhood is like being an actor. You can never, you know, you can get better at it, but you can never master it because
That's right.
Just as soon as you learned one stage of it, there's a whole other stage that you didn't realize was coming.
You got an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony. You're just missing an Oscar, right?
Yeah, this is like falling off a log.
Plus, there are rumors about a third Sex and the City movie. True?
There are rumors, that is true.
All next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. We're in New York with Cynthia Nixon, the Tony, Emmy, and Grammy-winning actress. She's just one award away from an EGOT. Cynthia is currently starring in Little Foxes on Broadway opposite the great Laura Linney. Little Foxes will open April 19th. They are in previews now. You like previews?
I do like previews.
You learn, right?
Yes, it's very exciting. We had our very first audience last night, so that's a great milestone to get over. But yeah, I like previews a lot. You have a lot of friends come and you listen to a little bit of what they say, not everything of what they say, but it's a time to really tune it up and tweak. Yeah.
When they bring back a play as historic as Little Foxes, which was the late 30s, right?
Yeah, 39.
What is the determining factor? We'll say, when will we bring this back?
Well, I mean, I think this is something that Dan Sullivan, who is our director, has wanted to do for a while. I think I think it partly depends on the actor or actress that you get to be in it. And also, you know, Lillian Hellman is a major, major dramatist of the 20th century, and we don't do her a lot anymore.
And it has to be relevant, though, right?
Well, and I think, unfortunately, the play is particularly relevant right now. And
the idea of switching roles, was that it from the start?
No, Laura was set to do the Little Foxes. It hadn't been announced yet, but she. I don't know, she and I knew each other a bit, and she had remembered that I had always said I had wanted to do Regina, which I don't remember saying to her, but I have always wanted to do Regina. And I think both of us also love this smaller role of Bertie, which is a really, really delicious kind of virtuosic role. So it was completely her idea because she wanted to do the play, but she thought.
So when do you switch off? Night after night, or
we generally
night?
It's a kind of it's a mixed bag. We often do 2 or 3 performances at once. Sometimes we just do a lone one here and there, but they've mixed it up. So literally,
the audience doesn't know who's playing.
No, the audience does know because if you go on the website to buy tickets, you can look at a schedule and. Her performances where she's Regina and I'm Bertie are blue, and the opposite are green when I'm Regina and she's Bertie.
I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
When Inherit the Wind opened on Broadway, it ran for a long time.
Yeah.
And Paul Mooney was Clarence Darrow.
Yeah.
And Ed Begley was William Jennings Bryan. And Tony Randall was H.L. Mencken. And Tony Randall would begin the play sitting on the stage. A train would come in, and Darrow would come off the train for the Scopes trial.
Uh-huh.
And Mooney was Darrow, and Begley was... And one day at a matinee, Tony Randall's sitting stage front. The train comes in, he looks up, and Begley was Darrow, and Mooney was... They each knew the other... Then they would switch off night. You didn't know when you came...
I have never heard that.
Who would play what. And they didn't tell the cast.
That's an incredible story. That's amazing.
It's a true story. Mooney and Begley, they got tired of being... They knew each other. Everyone knew the other's lines.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That's amazing. I will take that story back to the company.
Well, is it more difficult to do that?
To switch off?
Yeah.
I think it's very tricky, but I think 2 things. I think the hard thing about it is when you're playing a character and you really want to inhabit that character fully, it's like bonding with a child, right? You just completely focus on that child. This is almost like, I don't know, being the mother of twins or something, right? The good part about it is it works a whole different set of muscles. So you give yourself a break, But the hard part is not being able to fully immerse yourself in that one person, the way you usually do when you play a
Do you like
role.
one part better than the other?
Not so far. They're really, really different. They're really different. One of them is more kind of flashy and more sympathetic, and one of them is a much larger part, and you have to drive the whole engine of the play, and you're kind of a baddie.
You started
Kind of a
early
villain.
on Broadway, right?
I did. I started in films when I was 12, and then I did my first Broadway play when I was 14.
14, what'd you do?
I did the Philadelphia Story with Blythe Danner.
What were you, the...
I was her kid sister,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
the
so I
Virginia
remember.
Weidler part in the film. Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
You got an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony. You're just missing an Oscar, right?
Yeah, it's like falling off a log.
You got any movie coming that might be an Oscar possibility?
Well, I have a film coming out, yes.
What is it?
It's called A Quiet Passion, and it's a film by the British filmmaker Terence Davies, and it's a biography of Emily Dickinson, in which I play her from kind of her 20s until she died in her mid-50s.
The poet.
The poet.
And is it that strong a role? Come on, Cynthia.
It's a really great role. It is a really great role. I mean, to get to play Emily Dickinson is incredible. She
had
has
an interesting life.
a very interesting life, a very, confined life, but very interesting. A brilliant intellect, very emotionally complicated. Terence Davies wrote it himself. He's, I think, an astonishing writer. And the breadth of the part is one that you don't usually get, because as with Emily Dickinson's poetry, she goes through these very different phases in her life, and she starts out and she's so young and hopeful and enthusiastic and rapturous, and then she has all this heartbreak in terms of love and deaths in her family and lack of success, at least public success as a poet, and then she becomes very ill and bitter, and so she really goes through such a transformation.
And she dies in her 50s?
And she dies at 56, I think.
And the movie is called?
A Quiet Passion.
Who else is in it?
Jennifer Ely plays my sister.
Our guest is Cynthia Nixon. We'll talk politics and cherish roles after the break. She'll star in Little Foxes with Laura Linney. It opens officially April 19th here in New York. We'll be right back. We're back with Cynthia Nixon, who gets younger. You look fantastic.
you.
And there are rumors about a third Sex and the City movie. True?
There are rumors. That is true.
When you get so identified with a role as you did in that
Yes.
historic series,
Yes.
good or bad?
I think it's mostly good. I think one of the great things about the series was they really allowed those characters to evolve and change, and they didn't keep doing the same funny bits over and over, or the same dramatic bits over and over. They really let us age and change, and different things happen to us. So I feel like there was a lot of room to grow in those
And
parts.
it was pioneering in a way, right?
I think
For women.
so. I think so, yeah.
Were you always politically outspoken?
I come from politically outspoken people, so yes, my father was a journalist from Texas originally, and I think the thing that really brought him out of Texas to New York was the civil rights movement and wanting to be a part of that and chronicle that. So, and my parents, were very involved in opposing the Vietnam War, and yeah.
So you've been that way?
Yes,
right?
I think so.
You have brothers and sisters?
No, just me.
Just you?
Just me.
And you have a wife, right?
I do.
How long? You've been together?
We've been together since 2004, but we've only been married, I guess, since 2012.
Was that a historic day?
It was. It was. I think the most historic was when it actually passed in New York, and we had been working on that and fighting for that.
I did commercials for it.
Yes, it was. Everybody pitched in such a wonderful way.
And you have 3 children?
Yes, we have 3. Yes.
So how do you like motherhood?
I do. I like it. Motherhood is like being an actor. You can never You know, you can get better at it, but you can never master it, because
That's right.
just as soon as you learn one stage of it, there's a whole other stage that you didn't realize was coming.
And you meet children sometimes you can't explain how they are the way they are.
Yes, yes.
You're very active in the LGBT community, right?
Yes, yes.
Trump recently rescinded the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces Act. What do you make of Trump?
What do I make of Trump? Well, I'm one of those people who really didn't think he was electable. I was very devastated when he was elected, and I really don't know what I find more disturbing: his inhumane policy moves or his incompetence. I'm really not sure which is the greater of the two evils.
Can you say they're both surprising to you?
Neither is surprising. I think the incompetence, was a foregone conclusion. I think he's such a mixed bag, because when he was, a man about town in New York, he was a fairly cosmopolitan.
And he was a centrist. I interviewed him many times.
He was a centrist. He was just more of a Democrat, and certainly, maybe. Economically, he was a Republican, but certainly in terms of social issues. So, I guess if you look at his family's background, there's a lot of racism there, but so maybe that's less surprising. But the anti-LGBT stuff is,
because he was
surprising.
very protective of gay people when he was running. He talked very highly.
Yes, and trans people as well. Yeah, yeah.
When did the trans thing explode? That used to be like nowhere 10 years ago. You know, first of all, it was kind of rare.
Yes.
And I remember interviewing Rachel Roberts, who was an eye specialist, who coached Maria Navratilova, and then she became a woman and still retained her.
Renee Richards, is this?
Renee Richards.
Yeah.
She was a great interview.
Yes.
She retained all her patients.
Yes.
Who were with her as a man, then as a woman. But then it was an oddity.
Right, but as you say, it's been around longer than we think. If you think about like the Danish Girl and stuff like that, and I think that people are very smart to point out that the Stonewall Uprising, there were a number of trans women who are very important in that moment of standing up.
Are you surprised that historically that change has been rather quick compared to, say, the civil rights movement for blacks?
Yes,
Took 200 years.
Right. I think it's been, it's astonishing. And I think that's based on a lot of things. I think that's based on how hard everybody worked, and the fact that we are evolving as a society in terms of seeing that there are different kinds of people in the world and they all need to be included. But I also think that things like the Black Civil Rights Movement, of course, LGBT people were not enslaved in this country. I think that's the bottom line. But I think the thing about, as with some of the disability rights movement that has been able to advance pretty quickly too, is there are a lot of people who might be homophobic themselves, but then all of a sudden, lo and behold, they have a child who is LGBT, and also, I think that can change people pretty quickly.
Also, this medium.
Yes.
Seeing people, seeing your friends, your neighbors, seeing openly about it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that how many LGBT people there are in the media and people that people love and admire, I think that's made a big difference. But I think also people coming out in their families and in their workplaces and in their places of worship, I think, has been really important.
We're looking forward to Cynthia as Emily Dickinson. You're on a roll.
I am.
And she stars in The Little Foxes, which opens April 19th on Broadway, and we'll be right back. We're back with Cynthia Nixon. We'll see her in The Little Foxes on stage, and in the film, the title of which is?
A Quiet Passion.
A Quiet Passion.
Yes.
Do you prefer film or stage, one to the other? Not
really. I think I used to be more afraid of film because there's nowhere to hide in film. But as I get older, and I'm less afraid of it now.
But more film actors are afraid of theater because it's.
I suppose.
Remember Peter O'Toole in that movie?
Yes,
Live?
yeah.
You told me live?
Yes, yes. I suppose so. But the thing about stage is you can always, there's always tomorrow night. If you didn't go so well, you can have another crack at it the next day. Whereas film, you know, you have that few hours to get that scene, and then it's preserved forever. And if
But
you're
you
embarrassed,
can do it. You can do it over till you preserve it.
yeah,
Right.
but if you don't get it, they have to move on at some point. And it's always there to remind you.
When you're doing drama, I know comedy, you know how well you're doing if they're laughing. When you're doing drama, do you feel it?
On stage? Absolutely, you feel it. There is a wonderful thing that happens in a dramatic moment on stage where all of a sudden it's as if everybody's holding their breath. You know, it's just, there's a particular kind of silence, and all of a sudden the audience really does kind of become one and focus, and they breathe together, or they even hold their breath. And I don't know, you know things are not working when people are coughing. Coughing is the opposite.
Laurence Olivier said the beautiful thing about theater is that night and those 1,100 people will be a night that they shared unlike any other in their lives. And you share it with them.
Yes.
And no two nights are the same.
Yes, no two nights are the same, because the actors bring everything with them that happened to them that day, and like you say, there are 1,100 or however many people, and so it's you're never going to step in the same river twice.
We play a little game of If You Only Knew. I just throw some questions at you, Cynthia. Do not be nervous. It's not a trial.
Okay.
Who was your childhood celebrity crush?
Oh, I feel like I had so many. And they're all kind of embarrassing, like Andy Williams. I mean, can you imagine?
Andy Williams had a beautiful voice.
I know, but he's so white bread. I loved him. I loved Danny Kaye.
Oh, Danny. I was a great friend of Danny's.
Oh, I mean, just amazing.
Secret talent.
I'm a real musical comedy buff, so I have I won't say encyclopedic, but the way some people are with baseball statistics, I'm a little bit like that with
You
musical
appreciate
comedy.
Carol Channing.
I love Carol Channing.
Best advice you ever received?
You know, my mother always used to say, she didn't really take her own advice, but she always used to say, don't sweat the small stuff, and remember it's all small stuff. And I think that's a good one to remember at any moment.
What's the worst piece of advice you ever received?
The worst piece of advice, I don't feel like I've gotten that much bad advice, but when I was a young person, I had already been working because I started so young, I had saved money and I was going to buy an apartment. And my tax accountant said I shouldn't do it, that I wouldn't have the money and I wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage. And luckily I had the sense to just ignore him. And so I was a proud homeowner at age 25 or whatever.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
What's something we should all be paying more attention to?
I think Trump's environmental policies, because a lot
He
of this
doesn't like it.
a lot of this stuff is reversible, but not so much the environmental stuff.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
I'm not much of a risk taker, really, but I don't know, falling in love with my wife, I guess. Not that that was necessarily a choice, but.
When did you know you weren't heterosexual?
Well, this is a thorny issue. I guess if I have to put a label, I would put a bisexual label, but to me, there was no change. There was just this person, so.
Guilty pleasure.
I really like that chocolate toffee. What is that called? With the toffee on the inside and the chocolate on the outside.
Oh yeah,
that's.
Comes in boxes.
Yeah, it comes in boxes. You break it off. I love that.
Who would you trade places with for a day?
There are so many people it would be interesting to trade places with. I think I'd like to trade places with Oprah because she gives away so much money to people who are so excited.
Let's get a car.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that.
Something you're awful at.
Answering questions like these.
Where do you feel most at peace?
I don't know, in the bath. I love the bath.
I like showers.
Really? the hot bath. Yeah.
Is there something you long believed to be true and realized wasn't?
I was raised in the 70s, and I was always taught to try and walk in the other people's shoes, and that there were no real good guys and bad guys, just other points of view. And I believed that for a long time, and I have to say I don't believe that anymore. I believe that there really are bad guys out there, and we got to fight them.
There are.
Yeah.
And tell me something people don't know about you.
Something that, well, I have a BlackBerry.
I have a flip phone.
You have a flip phone, really?
I don't want to be addicted.
No, well, I am addicted, but I don't like the
addicted.
touch screen. I don't like the touch screen.
Everyone
I like the
I know
keypad.
is addicted.
I'm a little addicted.
Do you miss it when you're on stage?
Luckily, I don't think about it on stage.
Cynthia will answer your social media questions in our final segment. Little Foxes opens April 19th on Broadway. We'll be right back. We're back with Cynthia Nixon. Little Foxes opens April 19th. You get nervous on opening nights?
No, more the first preview, but we've gotten through that now.
No kidding. First preview is bigger than opening?
First preview was the first time that there's an audience there. You know, opening night is, you've already been performing for a few weeks. And
You worry about critics?
yeah, but the critics don't come to opening night
I know.
anymore.
They don't?
No,
When do
they
they
come
come?
like the week before because they want to have time to write their reviews.
You're kidding.
Yeah, they don't come to opening night anymore. Not in New York.
Oh my, I don't like that. Okay, some social media questions for you. Daniel Christopher Thomas, what actor or performance first inspired you to act?
Oh my goodness. I guess I really loved the old movies when I was a kid. So I would say, people like that, like
Black and white movie.
Katharine Hepburn and Bette Davis and Jimmy Stewart. But I had already been bitten by the bug at that point, but I do remember when I was 11 or so, I saw Meryl Streep and Raul Julia in The Taming of the Shrew, and it still stands out as one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
I interviewed Bette Davis, I interviewed Jimmy Stewart.
Really?
Betty was a riot.
She's amazing.
Daniel Christopher Thomas, what iconic role do you wish you had played?
What iconic role do I wish I had played? There are still some that I could get to. I mean, I guess the fact that I never did Laura in the Glass Menagerie, I still can't believe
That's
that I...
on Broadway now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But Birdie, the character that I'm doing now in Little Foxes, is almost like Laura if she'd gotten married and aged about 30 years. Annie
Hansen-McLachlan, if you were given the role of Miranda at your current age, would you still play and think of her character the same way?
I think I would. I mean, I think the main thing about Miranda, though, is that she's very driven. So I think, and she's a combination of driven and very confident and very insecure all at once. So I think she would be different now because I'm 50, and hopefully by the time you're 50, you have a little more expertise, a little more, sureness in yourself.
Do you feel 50?
I do feel 50. Particularly in my joints sometimes, I feel 50.
What was it like to play my late dear friend Nancy Reagan?
Oh.
She was a good friend.
She was really a fascinating person, and I was not, a fan of the Reagan administration per se, but I really loved learning about her and learning about her early years and reading her biography and her daughter's biography. And
she was more moderate than her husband.
Absolutely, and she got him to move on things like gun control, and I also just feel like she worked so hard to be the absolute best person she could be. And when you think about her childhood and how far she went, and he would never have been president without her, I don't think.
Oh, never.
So I found so much to admire, really.
Carl Monroe asks, and I saw you in this. You were in the 5th of July.
I was.
With
Richard Thomas, who's now playing my husband, yes.
Any memories?
Oh, so many memories. I mean, I only got to do it on film when they filmed it for American Playhouse, but I had been a fan of it as an audience member. I had seen it twice, which at that
Superman was in it.
I didn't see him in it, though. I only saw Richard Thomas. I saw him in it twice, and I just thought he was amazing, and the whole thing was amazing. So then it's like you're seeing your favorite play and then getting to step into it and be in it. It was just like a dream.
Do roles get harder when women age? We were here with Margot Martindale, and she told me that actually as she ages, they get better.
I think as I age, they get better too.
Is that a change?
I think it's partly a change in terms that there are starting to be, there's still way too few, but there's starting to be more. But I think, frankly, so much when you're in your 30s and 40s, so much of what you play is mothers of young children. And that's just not that interesting. And also, I think, as a society, we don't want to think that mothers of young children are complicated or they have unlikable, unreliable parts of them. They want to, you know, they don't like to think of that young children might be in the care of women who are unhinged or evil or whatever. But once you get to out of your childbearing years, you get to play really complicated women like Regina and the Little Foxes, who are terrifying.
You directed a lot of plays. Would you like to direct a movie?
I don't know if I'd like to direct a movie. Directing the plays that I did was very exciting for me. I don't know. I don't know. People ask me that a lot, and
you have more control of a movie.
You have more control, but there's so much pressure on you to get the shot and move on. And how do you know when you've got it?
You've worked for your current director before, right?
Daniel Sullivan, I have. This is my third time.
When you're used to a director,
yes.
Is that more comfortable?
Yes. I think, and I imagine it's more comfortable for the director as well.
Sure.
But sometimes when you have a director that you love, you just click with them immediately, and you know, it's as if you've known them forever.
How long are you committed to Little Foxes for?
At this point, we've only announced through mid-June, but we might extend a little bit after that.
I'll be back and I'll see you.
Thank
I'll come
you.
backstage.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks to my guest, the wonderful Cynthia Nixon. Little Foxes opens April 19th on Broadway, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at King's Things. See you next time.